When you think of a city, bustling metropolis filled with big businesses, beautiful landmarks, and massive skyscrapers probably come to mind. There are some cities, however, that have been left almost completely abandoned, airy and desolate. A sign of a time long past, here are the top 12 largest abandoned cities on Earth. Craco, Italy. As far as abandoned places go, a few are as Craco, Italy, located in the southern Italian province of Basilicata, and was founded all the way back in 540 AD, and has a striking appearance due to it having been built on a 400-meter tall cliff. Built in such a location so that the town could defend itself from potential invaders, the defense mechanism worked well 15,000 years ago. Yet, it eventually led to the city's downfall. This is because Craco eventually became vulnerable to natural disasters, and various landslides led to large amounts of damage being dealt to it. These landslides ultimately became so severe that in 1963 the Italian government forced out all the Craco residents, having them instead relocate to a nearby town of Craco Peschiera. Since then, it has become a popular attraction and film location, with movies as iconic as The Passion of Christ and Christ Stopped at Italy having been filmed there. Thames Town, China. Generally speaking, copies are usually far worse than the originals, and Thames Town in China is a prime example of this. Built in order to house overflow people from Shanghai, it was built to model Victorian-era London as it features cobbled streets, Victorian terraces, corner shops, and red telephone boxes. Despite its charming appearance, it hasn't been very palatable to Shanghai's residents, as despite being designed to hold 10,000 people, it currently remains mostly empty. However, considering that Shanghai is a city that's certainly not on the decline, we're sure people will be forced to move out there rather sooner or later. We'll be forced to move there sooner rather than later. Kangbashi District, Ordos City, China. While most city districts are busy, vibrant, and of course full of people, Odessa City Business District of Kangbashi is anything but. Located in China's northern region of Inner Mongolia. Construction began in 2003, yet despite it having a capacity to hold up to 300,000 people, as of 2010 it only had a population of 20 to 30,000, and since then the population has only grown slightly. As a result, despite having massive residential and office skyscrapers and high-tech facilities, it's still a very quiet place to live in. Kennecott, United States. The town officially holds the title as being the northernmost on the list of Kennecott. Located far up north in the snowy state of Alaska, it's notable for having produced about $200 million worth of copper ore between 1911 and 1938, which today would be worth more than $3 billion. However, in 1938, the mines officially closed down, making Kennecott a veritable ghost town. Yet since then, it's been incorporated into the Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve, which is the largest national park in the United States. And as a result, it's seen as a steady stream of tourists over the years. Kayakoy, Turkey. World War I was easily one of the most brutal conflicts in history, but we think you'd agree that few towns felt its effects strongly as Kayakoy, Turkey. Built in 1700s, it's located in southwestern Turkey, yet for years had a sizable Greek population. However, once World War I came around, the Ottoman Turks began persecuting the Greeks, and this came to a head in 1923 when a population exchange between the two countries caused Greeks living in there to be forced to evacuate, causing the town to quickly become abandoned. It has since become a small-scale tourist site. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. Oradour-sur-Glane was certainly never a large city. It stands apart for having one of the most tragic tales on this list. Occupied by the Germans during World War, if it entered the bad books of the Nazis when in 1994, it was reported that highly decorated officer Helmut Kampf had been killed by resident fighters from the town. As a result, SS officer Adolf Dickermann decided that revenge was in order and thus marched on the town with several SS troops, forcing the men into a barn and women and children into a church. Both groups were brutally killed by the soldiers due to a mix of gunshot and burn wounds, leading to a total death toll of 642. Almost every single citizen of the town was murdered on that day. Therefore, after the war's conclusions, President Charles de Gaulle ordered that the burned-out ruins of the old town be left untouched as a monument to the victims. As a result, with the exception of the museum, the site remained both untouched and uninhabited to this day. Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. While technically not an abandoned city, a trip through this massive metropolis will make you soon realize that it's on the emptier side. You see, Ashgabat, which is the capital of the former Soviet state of Turkmenistan, is very impressive at first glance, holding the Guinness World Record for having been built with more marble than any other city on the planet. It's chock full of massive monuments, spectacular statues, and brilliant buildings, including a large mosque and major sport complex that was used for the 2017 Asian Indoor Games. Yet despite all this glamour, the city remains nearly empty. This is because rather than invest in economic projects, the government has constantly used its massive oil and gas revenues to make Ashgabat a display of wealth in an otherwise impoverished nation. As a result, they have consistently evicted people from their homes without compensation and stifled the free press in order to allow these building projects to go through. Despite the country's GDP per capita being less than $7,000, when you then further consider that Ashgabat is considered to be one of the most expensive places to live in the world. Pripyat, Ukraine. While war, the economy and central planning are most common reasons for cities being abandoned, Pripyat stands apart for being abandoned largely thanks to a nuclear disaster. That's because on April 26 of 1986, catastrophic meltdown took place inside reactor number 4 at the nearby nuclear power plant at Chernobyl. This spewed flames and radioactive material into the skies over Pripyat, which was a nearby city built to house the plant's scientists and workers. As a result, the city's 49,000 inhabitants were evacuated within 36 hours. And in order to ensure that no one went back, the Soviet government established a 29-kilometer exclusion zone around both Pripyat and the power plant. Yet despite this, many former residents have had major health problems related to nuclear exposure, despite being in the radioactive city for less than 2 days. And most incredibly of all, there's still some that refuse to leave Pripyat. Even after the nuclear meltdown, with this population constituting of 400 people to this day. However, despite this massive mass, rendering Pripyat inhospitable for at least the next few centuries, authorities have deemed it safe enough for tourists to venture inside for short-term visits. As a result, practically anyone can purchase a guided tour into the abandoned city today, for as long as they are willing to shell out about $100 to $500 per person. Therefore, if you're planning on visiting Eastern Europe anytime soon, we highly suggest putting this spectacular city on your bucket list. Kolmanscop, Namibia. Mining towns tend to have a plenty finite lifespan, and Kolmanscop is certainly no exception. Located in the southwest corner of the southwestern African country of Namibia, it was founded in 1908 after a nearby railway worker found a large diamond in the area, leading to a massive diamond mining boom. German laborers came in droves to the town, which eventually have amenities such as hospital, ballroom, theater, sports hall, and casino, but also the first X-ray station in the southern hemisphere and the first tram in Africa. However, in 1928, a much larger deposit with much easier to find diamonds was found 260 kilometers south of Kolmanscop. And by World War II, the Kolmanscop mines began to become severely depleted, leading to the town being completely abandoned in 1956. Due to the natural forces of the desert, Kolmanscop is now covered in knee-deep high sand. Best of all, it can still be visited to this day. However, because it's located within a restricted area of the mid-desert known as Ashgabat, visitors must obtain a permit before venturing inside. Northern Brother Islands, United States. Although technically not a town, this abandoned location certainly has much more unsettling history than many of the other places on this list. That's because this island, which is located on New York's East River, is infamous for being a location of a hospital for people with highly contagious diseases. Known as a riverside hospital, it opened in 1885, and it mainly housed people with diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and smallpox. This typhoid melon being its most famous patient, then after being briefly closed throughout the World War II, it is used to house wartime veterans. In the 1950s, it was then repurposed as a treatment center for adolescent drug addicts. However, in 1963, the hospital closed its doors for good. And ever since, the island has been abandoned and off-limits to visitors. Nowadays, it is instead used as a wildlife sanctuary. However, there is research and area planning currently being put in place to perhaps reopen the island to the public in the near future.